So Mitch, thanks very much for having us stop by and do the interview with you. I understand you took some castings. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the castings that you've collected?
Okay. I've been doing Bigfoot research for about 6 years, so it's not like I've come about them all the time, so it's taken me 6 years to collect up what I've got. This first Bigfoot that's framed in the shadow box there, that is the very first footprint we found.
That would be the one on the left?
No, it's the one in the lighter brown case.
Okay.
And that measures 19 inches, 9 inches across. And we found that while we were doing our first investigation of an area, and we had a team together. It was my next door neighbor, Kyle Barentine, Alex Hearn from AZCRO, myself, my grandson, and my son. And Kyle was actually the one that found the footprint. And so Alex provided the plaster, and we cast the footprint. The area was active at that particular time. We were finding small branches all over the forest floor. It looked like there had been a rogue Brazar squirrel that had just really ripped the branches off all the trees.
No, I'm sorry, was this up on the Mogollon?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And so when we were walking through looking for footprints and stuff, we noticed all these branches all over the ground. And we found a rain gauge, a government rain gauge that's made out of metal, and it looked like somebody had wadded it up like a piece of paper.
Wow.
And we went on over, and we were walking back on the road back towards our vehicles when a forest ranger drove up and wanted to know what we were doing, and so we told him. And he says, well, that explains the scat I've been finding. He says, I've been finding the scat. I don't know what animal is dropping it. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. And so we were impressed about that. Well,
did you get a chance to look at some of it?
Yes, we actually collected some of it.
So how would you describe it?
It's very finely processed. It's not... doesn't have chunks and berries and stuff like that. It's something that has been chewed thoroughly and processed thoroughly. It's fairly large in diameter. It looks kind of like soft serve ice cream when it comes out of the dispenser.
That's interesting.
But there's a lot of it. It's
huge, huh?
Yeah, it's...
I would imagine.
So you can kind of tell the difference between this and a bear, and that's what was puzzling the forest ranger.
See.
He knows bears, but he couldn't figure out what this was.
That's interesting. Can you tell us a little more about the other castings that you've got here?
Okay, the far one on the left here was actually found just outside of our camp. That's this one over here, in a darker brown case. That was found when about the third time that we went up, and it jumped a barbed wire fence and landed in the mud, and its foot slipped forward, and that's why it's kind of like a smeared footprint. The other footprint, the small footprint that you're looking at now, was found right outside of our tent one morning. And if you notice, the heel and so forth on the small footprint is not typical of human.
This is the one we're talking about.
Right, the one back there in the recess there. Yeah, that's, you notice the heel is kind of...
it's very narrow.
Very narrow. Well, we think it was running on its tiptoes to be quiet. And because they have the mid-tarsal break, their foot dynamics is a little bit different than ours. the next big one over here next to the stereo, that was found about 3 years ago. And that's your typical flat-footed Bigfoot type print. And so that leads me to believe that they can use their foot in different surfaces to obtain more traction. So when they're walking the forest floor and not trying to leave any tracks, they walk flat-footed.
All right, just to give you some perspective, I'm 6'2", about 350 pounds, and I wear a size 14 shoe. And this will hopefully give you some perspective on how big this casting is. Do you know what the dimensions are, Mitch?
That one's 17 inches by 8 inches across,
Yeah.
6 inches at the heel.
Yeah, it's enormous. So, Mitch, these castings you've collected over the period of how many years?
6 years.
6 years, and all were collected at the top of the Mogollon Rim.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, when you go out on an investigation or an expedition, are you always prepared with plaster to cast footprints, or do you mostly photograph them now? No, you're always ready for that.
Well, I have a backpack that I call my CSI bag, crime scene investigation bag, you know.
Yeah.
And it's got some large bags of the fix-all plaster in it, Ziploc bags. So all I have to do is add water and then mush up the bag and then pour it out like almost like cake frosting on it. So that way I can carry it around with me. I carry water, other Ziploc bags to collect specimens like hair and so forth, and a few odds and ends to make life a little easier. You know, some matches and some stuff like that.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, because I've only taken an interest in Bigfoot as a real interest as of the last year and a half or so.
Mm-hmm.
And you were one of the first researchers that I found on YouTube. The first thing I noticed is you were local.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, I started to wonder how you made the transition from, you know, a working man to a researcher. You know, and still kept the family fed or whatever, and that I would imagine is a trick. So can you tell us a little bit about, like, first a little bit about what interested you in Bigfoot, and then secondly how you made the transition from a job or career to being a researcher?
Well, it's kind of a roundabout story how it came about. My family are some of the early settlers of northern Arizona. And they handed down stories of northern Arizona, of the Mogollon monster, Arizona's Bigfoot. You know, and I grew up with those stories. But I was really skeptical. I didn't believe them. To me, they were stories that were meant to keep the kids scared and around the campfire so that they wouldn't go wandering off and stuff like that, you know. Throughout my life, I had a few interesting experiences, but I always wrote them off as being a mountain lion or a bear or something like that. So we decided to collect up these stories and publish them so that those stories wouldn't be lost, because, you know, people die and the stories go away. So we published the stories, and the book didn't really sell all that great, but we managed to sell off what we had. And about a year or so after that, I noticed that on, let's see, which it was eBay, I believe it was, one of the books was going for $300. Whoa!
Wow.
So we took a look at republishing and got it republished, and that's when the books really started being taken notice of by the United Kingdom, the folks in the United Kingdom.
And so what was the title of the book?
It's The Mogollon Monster, Arizona's Bigfoot.
Okay, what year was it published?
First in 1995,
Okay.
and then we republished it just a few years back. Anyway, they because of those books, we started getting queries from people. They would hunt us down to tell us their story, you know, and call us and tell us their story. So we went to investigate one story that happened up on the Mogollon Rim. We went up there, and it was about a couple that was up there camping in a camp spot, and they went to go use the outhouse. And so they had to march up the hill a little ways to get to the outhouse. And the wife went in first to use the outhouse, and the husband was standing guard, you know. And a ruckus started on the side of the mountain that just was terrible. He said there was screaming and trees breaking and all kinds of noise going on. So they both got in the outhouse, and the door wouldn't really lock, so they basically spent the night in the outhouse holding the door closed with their feet. So,
Wow.
and they called us about it, or I got the report about it, and we went up there to check it. And that's when we went up there to check it. We were camped in an area after searching the area, and we had not found anything, which didn't surprise me. I didn't believe it anyway. But during the middle of the night, the tent got squished down on us, and something was pushing down on the top of the dome tent. And as soon as I grabbed the pistol and cocked it, whatever it was knew what that noise was and just let it go. And the dome tent popped back up. Well, we got out of there really quick, and went back the next day and got our stuff and left. And that's when we formed a team to go back up to reinvestigate what it was. And that's when we found that first big footprint. And that was only about 30 feet away from our tent.
Unreal. So you didn't hear any noise? It didn't growl or vocalize anything?
I think we were making too much noise. You know?
Yeah. Holy cow.
You know, it gets pretty exciting when that happens.
And you still went back, huh?
Yeah.
That might have done it for me, though.
Well, you know,
I would have been relegated to the couch after that, I think.
going back, being prepared, you know, is a whole different thing than getting caught off totally off guard. So,
Yeah.
you know, I totally expected to find bear prints, but it didn't turn out that way. Those branches that I was telling you about, we actually found where those went. It all ended up underneath a spruce tree, and it was turned into about an 8-foot bed, about 4 feet wide, and up under this spruce tree there was a deer carcass, and something had been feeding on that deer carcass, and the skeleton was totally intact. The hide had been pulled down over the hind haunches, and the bones were just picked clean, and there was no skull. And on the other side of the tree is when we found another big footprint. And, you know, so that's when we started going, ha, there's something going on here, you know.
Yeah, really. So one of the things that I found as I started to watch your videos is, well, the Mogollon Rim, that whole section up on top of the rim is vast. I mean, it's a whole lot of nothing up there.
Right.
And so I thought, where did you begin to find more activity? Because it's so big out there that, you know, it's either chock full of activity almost everywhere you go, or you knew where to go, or you found, you know, where there was more activity. So have you found, you know, hot spots up on the Mogollon Rim, or is it pretty hot pretty much the entire area up there?
Well, I started tracking all of the sightings that I could gather together, where they happened. And certain patterns begin to appear.
Okay, so the sighting reports then you got from just people calling in to you, or
Multiple sources.
okay, because the BFRO doesn't really have that much.
No.
I went on their website and there's really not much out there, and I know there's more sightings in Arizona than are being reported.
Yes, well, a lot more, because when Finding Bigfoot did their town meeting in Payson, it was wall-to-wall people.
Is that right?
The fire code wouldn't let any more people in.
You were there.
I was there.
Yeah, you were on the show, right? You took
Yeah.
them to a spot where you were camped and where you camp regularly and have had regular experiences there, right?
Right. Now, because of the tracking the sightings and listening to the various stories and so forth, I've kind of developed a criteria for finding Bigfoot areas. One criteria is there has to be lots of good, clean water. Not pond water, you know, the brown, scummy, stuff like that. It has to be good, clean water. There has to be a lot of food, because you're supporting a very big animal that not only has to survive, but they have to thrive. In other words, they need to be able to mate and have kids and stuff like that, support a family. They need lots of foliage to hide in, because they are so big. And they're cryptid in nature, and they do hide very well. And the fourth item is the lack of man. The least, you know, fewer men, the better. So if you can find places with that 4 criteria, your chances of actually finding a Bigfoot is a lot better. So.
You know, that's the first time I've heard anybody mention, you know, that there needs to be a lack of man. But that really makes sense. Betty and I, my wife and I, recently went up to the Mogollon Rim just on a whim. And we stopped in at the Long Valley Cafe and talked to one of the employees there. Her name is Bonnie. She's a waitress there. And I found a BFRO card. Thought I brought it with me. Had an investigator's name on there, and she told us about a recent sighting of 2 years ago that an Arizona Department of Transportation camera caught a Bigfoot crossing Highway 3 somewhere south of Lake Mary, and then her husband actually had a sighting. He drives a snowplow in the wintertime and saw one as he was rounding a turn. So there seems to be, you know, a lot of activity up there. And so how do you determine, because I know you've called out some places up there that I couldn't find on a map. Some place called, was it something Valley?
Spooky Valley.
Spooky Valley, yeah. And I looked it up. I can't find anything on Spooky Valley. So
that's because it's a local name. It's not on any map.
okay,
And it's called that by the locals. And that's simply because over time they have found that any cattle or horses that go into that area don't come back. The forest rangers don't like working in there alone. Strange things happen. Hunters come out of there and say they will never hunt that area again. So that's why it's called Spooky Valley by the locals.
oh, that's interesting. And that's where you base most of your investigations in?
Well, I worked that area around it. I have not actually been into Spooky Valley itself, because that requires a lot of hiking and a lot of equipment. And I found that so far I haven't had to, because they come down out of the valley. They come down and basically they're the kings of the night.
Yeah.
You know, once it's dark, they can pretty much do whatever they want to, and there's nothing going to stop them. Hunters don't hunt at night, not in Arizona. You know, and most of them are very dark colored, you know, black fur and dark skin. They can go pretty much where they want to, so they're mostly nocturnal.
Yeah. So have you had a sighting of your own? I mean, you've had an eyewitness sighting
Oh
of
yeah,
some of these Bigfoots? Too?
I've had several.
Yeah?
She's had a couple.
Really?
21 day.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, tell us about that.
Well, mine have stretched over a period of time. The most recent one was just, 2 weeks ago? We were investigating a double sighting, and we found some nests in the area, and while we were investigating those nests over the night, I was listening to my sound amplifier, and I could hear two women talking. I couldn't understand what they were saying, but there were two female voices. And I'm going, there's no female out here, you know. We're a long ways in, you know. And so I listened to that for a while. And Mark Larson, who sometimes goes with me, he was with me, and we're sitting there next to the fire, and one of my light sensors just turned on. It's motion activated. And when it did, I could see one standing just right at the circle of light, you know, where the light kind of terminates and so forth. I could see his head and shoulders standing there.
This light sensor is on your trailer?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Well, I've got a lot of equipment on my trailer, so.
Yeah.
Tell them about the first couple.
Oh, the first sighting?
Mm-hmm.
My first sighting was the second time up to investigate the area. We were coming down.
This is the same area?
Yeah,
This is
basically the same area.
A few miles apart.
A few miles apart, yeah.
that Spooky Valley area that you talked about?
Yeah, we were about 10 miles. The area itself covers probably 25 square miles. That has been really active. There's been a forest fire in it, so it kind of pushed them to one side. So I had to re-find them, you know. But yeah, my first sighting was coming down a small two-wheel rut road, and I was driving down the road with my grandson in the truck, and I caught some movement out of the side of my eye, and I turned and looked, and as I did, this thing came up out of a kind of a cave type hole in the ground, and he turned and looked at me, and it was like the expression on his face was like, oh, I've been seen. And then it took off running.
Wow.
So I slammed on the brakes.
This is in daylight?
Yeah. Slammed on the brakes, tried to get it in reverse to get back to where my son could see it and so forth. But he was looking forward because he thought I saw it up there, but it was off to the side. Got it backed up, and we went down to the cave and looked through it, and there'd been some dirt pushed around and stuff like that. And the area was so strewn with broken logs and limbs and stuff like that. It took us a couple of minutes to get to the cave. But it disappeared into the brush in a matter of a few seconds.
So, see if I get this right. So after seeing the Bigfoot, you went down to the cave to investigate? And there was nothing there, though.
No, what we did find was that particular cave had two other entrances.
Ah.
So we kind of think that it was trying to mislead us, get us to look this way while his friends were going, or family were going out the other two entrances.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, that's amazing.
So yeah, we've been learning that these guys are very, very intelligent, very smart. And of course they'd have to be able to exist this long without being captured or so forth, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you reminded me of an interview I did with a fellow named Tim. He's a Missouri man who last year had 2 or 3 different experiences. He's a hunter and a fisherman, he's an outdoorsman. And his last experience, he actually saw a Bigfoot breaking through high grass, tall grass. And when he put his gun on it and looked through a scope just to look to see what it was. And as soon as the Bigfoot got into the area where he had been through, it realized that it was probably walking into an area where it would be seen, and then it ducked down in the grass, but he was able to see it through a scope And one of the things he said was much like you said. It had a look on its face like it'd been busted. Like,
Yeah.
oh no, and it was, trying to stay below the grass, but he could see it very, his face very clearly. And so, it gives you the impression then that they're intelligent, they're smart, and they know when they walked into something or something, isn't right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Well, I know they learn very quickly. You can figure out a way to maybe trick them once or twice to try to get a shot of them. They won't fall for the same geek twice.
Yeah.
They learn very quickly.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you as well, what is your take on infrasound or zapping? Have you ever had an experience like that where you've gone in there and felt sick?
No.
It's
I've been
never happened.
scared, but never sick or no headaches or no blurred vision or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I've been pretty close to them. So, in fact, I keep telling people if they wanted to hurt me, they could have had me already. That's just all there was to it.
Yeah. There was a recent video that you shot where you were chased out
Yes.
and you turned around and you pointed your video camera behind you as you were making a hasty exit. You want to tell me a little bit about that?
Well, that was in one of the early videos that I just remastered. So it basically we had gone up to search the area, and I was by myself, and I had come down off of the hill, and I was headed down to that spruce tree that had the carcass under it. And I was going to check on how things were progressing. Was there another carcass or whatever, was the nest still being used? And so as I was getting close to it, that spruce tree, then I started hearing the bushes move. And sometimes you can catch a shadow between the tree limbs and stuff like that of movement, but you can't really tell what it is. So, there's always a possibility it could be an elk, or it could be a deer, or a bear, or even a lion, So, what you don't want to do is push your luck when you're by yourself, So I moved around and tried to get video of it as the best I could, and then I started back out, and that's when I noticed that it was following me. So I had the actual photograph was taken on a disposable camera, 35 millimeter disposable.
You took it?
Yeah, I took
You
it.
just, what?
I just
pointed back
pulled it
and
up
fired
behind me and clicked, So, because I knew something was back there. And sure enough, it caught it. He didn't have time to jump back behind the tree, and you can definitely see his shoulder and his arm and his leg.
That may be what she showed me, because it was half, kind of, you could see the head and half the body. That may be the same shot.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was amazing. So what made you think that this thing wanted you out?
Well, they do things to intimidate you. If making noises and stuff doesn't do it, they'll resort to rock throwing. They'll resort to screaming, grunting, growling. They basically let you know that you're not wanted.
Yeah.
So they've never attacked, but I've never pushed my luck. Just recently I was over in the White Mountains area, and I ran across one that let me know he was there. And I couldn't see him with my eyes, but then in trying to watch a little 2x2 viewfinder, and trying to point it in the right direction and keep looking up to make sure I'm not going to get pounced on, So I was actually able to capture that one also.
Tell them about the size of the rock that he threw.
Oh, it was a nice big one. It was about, probably about this big. You know, when it hit the ground, it wasn't, you know, how rocks kind of clunk and clatter and stuff. This was a boom, you know, when it hit. So,
Did it land close to you?
Unreal.
probably about 5-10 feet away.
Close enough.
I got the message, you know.
Yeah,
So
that'd be all it would take for me.
I got backed off, and you know, it's kind of funny because a lot of people say you work all this time to try to get a sighting of Bigfoot, and then you run at the first. Well, you know,
They're not ghosts.
they're not ghosts.
No, they're real flesh and blood, and they can inflict harm if they wanted to.
Very easily. And my thinking is if I persist and make myself a nuisance, then I'll never see them again. But if I give them respect and back off or leave them a treat or something like that, then I hope I'm looked more as a non-threat and their guard laxes up a little bit.
Apparently it works with some of them anyway.
Yeah, it seems to work with some of them.
Yeah. So is that kind of your philosophy and your approach when you walk into their area? Is you walk in with a certain mindset or a certain way of walking or doing things as you investigate?
Well, I've done a lot of studying with the folks that like Jane Goodall and so forth that have studied the apes, and I can't remember the other gentleman that studied the great apes and stuff, and how they become habituated to the gorillas and so forth. You have to learn what to do and what you can't do. And one of the things is you can't act aggressive. With a Bigfoot, you know, if you got close enough to them, don't look them in the eyes like we're looking. You know, keep your eyes low. Give them the respect. You know, if they do something out of the ordinary, like an aggressive action, like pick up a stick or thump their chest, because they'll do that, just like a gorilla does. They thump their chest, you're in big trouble. You know, you better back off real quick.
Wow.
But basically, if you did get attacked, I think the best philosophy is just drop to the ground into a fetal position. Let them have their dominacy. You know, let them realize that you're not going to fight them. Okay. One thing you don't want to do is smile, because if you smile, you show your teeth. When you show your teeth, you're ready for a fight.
Wow.
So I've been trying to adopt those things into, you know, whenever I come close to them. Most of the time, I hear them. I don't see them. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you, when you go in like that, especially if you're by yourself, are you armed?
Yes.
Yeah.
I usually carry a sidearm and a can of bear pepper spray.
Do you carry it openly or do you hide it under your shirt? Or?
Usually I pull my shirt tail over it,
Yeah.
keep it hidden.
And
But-
a can of bear spray, you said?
Well, I'm not sure what the bear spray would do, as to whether it would slow them down or, you know, whatever, but I don't want to shoot one. You know, and a lot of people will hate me for that too, because I've had the opportunity of doing that, but in my way of thinking, that's not the way to do research. Kill your subject, no, you know, and not only that, but you become the aggressor. That's the last you'll ever see of them.
Yeah.
You know.
And the idea of no kill versus kill right now is kind of a hot topic.
Yeah.
And there's I've seen tons and tons of posts on Facebook group pages about kill versus no kill, and I mean the opinions vary on both sides.
Well, until we get specific until we get things verified as to whether or not they're human or hybrid human, we really don't need to go killing them. Because in my mind, what's going to happen is somebody kills one and gets it out of the forest, which is going to be a trick in itself. First thing that's going to happen is the authorities are going to seize it. And of course, they'll run their labs to find out specifically what species it is. And if it does come up human, you could find yourself in some big troubles. Just like if you went down to the Amazon and shot a native down there in the Amazon forest. You know, and if you planned a trip up there to kill a Bigfoot, then it's first degree. It's not manslaughter, it's not second, it's first degree, you planned it.
Wow.
So-
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way. Mhm.
So I'd advise, don't shoot them. Not until we figure out what these things are, you know?
Yeah.
And even then, I wouldn't shoot one. Not
Yeah,
unless
you know,
it was
I-
self-defense.
I'm kind of torn between, you know, I wouldn't shoot them. I say, that's easy to say, but I guess if I were being attacked, I might,
Yeah.
or probably would. I guess I'm no kill, but at the same time, if one is taken, you know, I would hope that it would yield a lot of knowledge for us, you know, about these animals, so it clears up a lot of theory and a lot of conjecture about what they are or are not.
Yeah.
Whether they're, I don't know whether it would clear up the idea whether they're supernatural or not, you know, because there's a lot of claims that they can cloak or they can, you know, they can use telekinetic or mind speak. Or, you know, I don't know about all that. Have you had any experience with that? Any of the supernatural sort of
Well, I know that
side of
they're
Bigfoot?
very, very good at what they do, hiding.
Yeah.
I know they're flesh and blood because I've seen them bleed. So,
Tell me about that.
Yeah.
I have a game camera footage of one that was messing with my game cameras, and it's a small one. And it, you know, my camera's 8 feet up a tree, and so it has to reach up to get it. So it's small. You can see the hand go up for it in one photo, and then the next photo you see a face, the camera looking down on the face. And I think that he was pulling on it, you know, the camera, and it slipped, hit himself in the nose, and you can see a bloody streak across his upper lip.
Wow.
So,
Have you published those pictures?
yeah.
Are they in your book or?
Well, they're on the website. They're in the YouTube.
I'll have to take a look. I hadn't seen that. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's and that particular one, it was a redhead. You know.
And the first one he saw was a redhead.
Yeah.
People up at Happy Jacks were kind of reddish too.
Yeah, one was seen in the Happy Jack area was also described as reddish brown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So with all the activity that you know of up on the Mogollon Rim, does it surprise you that there's not more investigation up there from other parts of the country, other investigators spend more time there? I know Matt Moneymaker has said that he knows there's squatches up there. When they came down to do their show, he seemed excited about investigating there. But are you aware of other investigators from across the country coming in to investigate?
Well, people like Tom Biscardi, he's been here.
But he
Finding
doesn't
Bigfoot.
investigate.
There's several Arizona groups that go up there and investigate. As far as out-of-state people, I've taken quite a few investigation teams into the area. Of course, I make them sign a non-disclosure agreement so that the place will be protected, because I don't want the place overrun with people. People say that's selfish, but you know, in Arizona, they're very limited as to the places they can be. The Mogollon Rim has the Ponderosa Pine Forest that runs from Flagstaff all the way through New Mexico, but it's just a strip that goes down through the state. The north of it's desert, the south of it's desert. So everything is kind of crunched into that area. And with the major forest fires that have happened, that's kind of cut off the east and the west exits. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so they're kind of stuck unless they're willing to try to migrate at night. Now, strictly night, which they could possibly do, but you know, if there's plenty of food and plenty of water and they're doing okay, man's not harassing them, then they really don't have a reason to move. which it puts down another theory. Some people theorize that they migrate all the way from Arizona to Alaska and Canada and stuff like that. I don't think so. I think as long as they got food, water, shelter, lack of man, they pretty much stay put. The only ones that really migrate are probably the ones that have become of age and they're out to find a mate or start their own clan or something like that. So
Yeah, it makes sense. It's a good theory.
that's what it looks like to me. And I used to think that it was an alpha male system where there was the big alpha male like a lion's pride, and then several females that were breeding age and so forth, and then the kids grew up around that. But it's almost now appearing as if they're monogamous. They pair up basically for life. I have no proof of that other than what I watched when they came in and sat down at a picnic table and ate the food that I left them. And so, and they acted just like a human family, a mom and a pop and a baby. They came in and sat down at the picnic table and ate the stuff I left them. So
They found that they have a preference to any kind of food?
they like sweets,
Candy?
candy.
Sweets or,
Now, it doesn't seem to be so much for hard candy. They like the softer candies, and they like baked goods like brownies, cookies, you know, mostly anything that's sweet. But if you look at what they have to eat in nature, most of it's bland and bitter.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, so sweet, that would be like finding honey in a tree, you know, or
Oh, yeah.
something like that. They'd be all over that. So
Yeah. So what's your opinion then on habituation and habituation sites? You think it's a good idea to habituate these Bigfoot, you know, to trust and come into certain areas and come in for food and things like that?
well, you're kind of setting them up for a hunter, or because there are people out there to bag them, that want to bag one. That's their main purpose. They're hunting for them. And so, you know, you might be setting them up for that. But I try to counter that by wearing basically the same clothing every time. My red shirt and jeans.
You're ready to go now.
Yeah. So, you know, they know that the guy in the red shirt and jeans with the beard is not out to hurt them. And I think they have laxed their guard up quite a bit because evidently there's quite a few of them that follow me around and kind of curious as to what I'm doing.
Hoping
So,
for brownies.
hoping for brownies.
They don't throw rocks anywhere near as much as they used to.
Yeah.
But when he leaves things like Snickers, they are more likely to bring trade. They have traded things several times. But when he left the Snickers bars, they brought him black walnuts. They had already been peeled of their outer shell so that they would keep. And there's times that they brought him pine cones because he was using pine cones in the little barbecue thing to cook with. And they brought him those. And then there was the one time that he left the arrow of sunflower seeds, and they came and put some pine cones right there on the table where the sunflower seeds had been. So they do trade, and I think they're more likely to trade more and trade quicker when you give them something that they like.
Yeah. They ever leave you an animal or feathers or skulls or anything like that?
Well, you know, they've left me quite a few different things. I think
What's the most unusual?
Well, the Spanish moss was the first
Yeah.
thing they left.
Spanish moss was the first time they left something for us. And if you look up the medicinal value for Spanish moss, it's high in antibiotics. They used it during the Civil War to treat gangrene and open wounds and stuff like that.
It's a blood stopper and all kinds of things. So
Yeah.
it's good, valuable stuff, and it wasn't growing where he was. It was farther up the mountain than it grows. So somebody brought it down specifically and left it in front of the tent, in front of the tent door.
So, and they've left me, the time they left the circle of rocks and the half of it being
Yeah,
pine cone.
there was
half
a
of it being
circle,
rocks.
half was pine cones, the other half was rocks.
It had meadow grass laid out like this in the bottom of the circle, and then there was one pine cone sitting in the circle, and I couldn't figure out what that was until she says, "Well, is there any place that looks like that?" And bing, you know, Spooky Valley Meadow is a round meadow surrounded half by trees and half by cliffs. And there's a stump, a big tree stump out there in the middle of the meadow, and it's like they're telling me where they're from, you know. So
Wow, that's
Just
amazing.
when he left the
Just on
sunflower
Sunday.
seeds, it was pointing to his camper. And when they left the pine cones, they pointed to a certain area where they were from.
yeah,
So you believe they run in clans?
yes, I believe that very rarely are they alone. So that's why I don't think you're ever going to get a Bigfoot body by shooting one. You're going to have to take the whole clan on. So
Yeah,
very rarely alone.
yeah. So Mitch, where do you see yourself, from here? Going to continue investigating, continue documenting everything?
Yes.
Any future plans for anything different, anything unusual, anything?
Well, I'm trying to better my technology to help me out. Like I said before, they learn very quickly. When I first started out in the area, my game cameras were adequate to get different parts of their bodies. Hands, a piece of a face, an ear, something like that. But they kind of learned real quickly that box is telling me stuff about them. And
Move them.
so they would just flat move the camera on the tree and point it into the bushes, or take it off and it's looking up in the sky or something like that,
Yeah.
And that brings up the subject of, can they see infrared? A lot of people believe they can. Well, we don't really know. I was thinking that they could see more of the red cherry glow on the LEDs when they light up. You can't really see the light itself, or using the light with the naked eye you can't see anything, but the camera, the panel will glow cherry red. And that's why I've got this new camera sitting here on the... I'm going to be trying this new camera.
Oh, wow.
This is the new blackout technology. Okay. Basically, it operates in a spectrum of the infrared that can't be seen by humans or animals. You cannot see the LEDs light up. There's no lights to give it away. It's totally silent. There's no click or whir or anything like that, so it's not going to give its position away that way. And the nice thing about this one is it takes sound.
Oh,
Is it motion activated?
Yes, it has a motion activator right here. So if I get something messing around with it, and stuff like that, I'll also be able to catch whatever vocalizations it might be making, like grunts, groans, or
Yeah.
something like that. So, that's one of the new technologies I'm going with.
Very nice.
Some of the people that I'm working with, like Ben Hansen, he is the owner of a company that sells high-end night visions
Oh,
and thermals and stuff like that. He's got some really nice equipment, and those thermals would really come in handy for verifying what you see in night vision. Because if you can use two different technologies and get a thermal plus you get it in your night vision, that's not a hoax. That's real. There's
Yeah.
no way to hoax them both.
So that leads me to talking a little bit about audio.
Yes. I'm going to sit back down.
So when you investigate, obviously you definitely want to catch video, so you're using a camera, etc. But have you done anything with audio?
Yes. In fact, I would recommend anybody that's trying to research where to start looking is to use a good sound activated audio recorder. To one that they can take out and hide in the bushes or something like that. And then if anything sounds off in the area, you're going to get a recording of it. And that's more, gives you a wider coverage than a camera will. Because a camera only sees at night, this one goes up to 55 feet. Well, audio is going to be anything within ear range, you know.
Yeah.
So it'll tell you more if something is in the area.
So have you had some success with audio?
Yes. Yes.
You've gotten vocalizations, language type stuff?
Yes.
What did it sound like to you?
Well, in a lot of cases, they whistle, they'll squeak, they'll mimic other animals. For instance, when they do a coyote, it sounds like a coyote that's been breathing helium. It's like
kind of higher.
maybe an octave or two too high, you know. They will whistle, and it sounds just like somebody whistling. In fact, I do it very well. If I can do it. They'll whistle like that. And I've actually got them to talk back to me when they're whistling. So it's a noise that's made with lips, not a beak, you know. This is not a hoot owl or something like that.
Do they whistle in patterns?
Yes. And another thing is that they copy the whippoorwill. We don't have whippoorwills.
I've heard that before, yeah.
No, we don't have whippoorwills in Arizona. We have a Mexican whippoorwill, but it doesn't sound anything like what I've recorded. So they do mimic animals. They do an eagle scream. And the only way you can tell the difference between an eagle scream they're making and the real eagle scream is what time of night is it.
And then the turkey gobbles at night.
Yeah, turkey gobbles at night. Turkeys don't gobble at night, they roost.
Right.
So, you know.
I've heard also that they imitate crows,
Yeah.
and that you'll hear crows at night, and same thing, they roost at night, so yeah, I've heard that as well. So when you've heard them vocalize, you know, communicate or language, what did it sound like to you?
Well, when they're using a language, it talks, I'll tell you exactly what it sounds like. It sounds like two Navajo Indians talking. Okay.
I've heard that. I mean, I've heard that they, well, I've heard the samurai language.
Yeah, well,
I've heard that.
Yeah.
And then I've also heard that it sounds Native American. That it sounds, the rhythm of their voice and stuff is.
And it seems like you can almost tell what they're saying, but it just, you know, it just doesn't click because it's a foreign language. But I used to say it sounded like a samurai, you know, a drunken samurai wrestler. But when I was up on the Indian Nation, I was listening to the Navajo radio, and they were talking in Navajo, and I'm going, that's what I heard. You know? So, no lower tone, lower voice.
Yeah. So do you believe that there's a connection between the First Nations people and Bigfoot?
Well, I think anybody that's lived on the land and close to nature is going to be associated with one another. We'll understand each other a lot more than us city folks do, you know.
Yeah. Well, a lot of First Nations tribes believe that they were, or they are, just another tribe.
Yeah.
And there's, you know, history been written about that, about the hairy forest people or the big hairy people as being another tribe.
Right.
And some accounts are that they were kind of aggressive, a little bit tricky to deal with, and others were that they were just, you know, very benign people, no tribe.
Yeah. Well, I have ran into different aggressivenesses in different parts of the state. Okay, so the ones I'm dealing with right now up on the rim where I usually go, they seem to be very passive and so forth. The ones that I have dealt with over in the White Mountains, they're not very happy you're there, you know, and they're kind of aggressive, you know. I don't trust them as much as I do.
So what were some of the differences that you encountered when you were in the White Mountains?
Well, in the
Did
White
you get run
Mountains,
out of there right away, or what?
I was run out of there really quick, and that's where I got the big boulder thrown at me.
Oh yeah,
You know,
that's not something you've experienced up on the Moby, you know, having a rock that big.
yeah, most rocks are probably, you know, the size of a baseball maybe,
Yeah.
or smaller.
You think it's because they live more remotely up in the White Mountains? I mean, it's pretty vast. It's very high. It's on Indian reservation.
It might have to do with the food. There's less food in the White Mountains. It's mostly meat, deer, elk, and turkey and stuff like that. Whereas the area that I'm searching on the Mogollon Rim is plumb full of all kinds of food, all kinds of edible plants, all kinds of insects,
Apples, nuts,
apples
berries.
and apples and apples, you know.
Apple ferns.
Yeah, there's ferns, sweet onions, sweetgrass, just tons of food.
Yeah.
And that's one question that a lot of people ask me is how much food can sustain a Bigfoot and so forth. Well, this particular area, not too far away, is full of cliff dwellings. Many, many cliff dwellings from ancient Indians.
There's no roads into it.
No roads into it. But the thing is, if the ancient Indians could survive in that area for hundreds of years, Bigfoot could too. Live off the land, you know. So I have no doubt that it could support several hundred in this particular area, even though that, you know, a great big animal like that is supposed to eat tons of food. There's tons of food there.
Might also have something to do with the fact that the one in the White Mountains areas are the ones that your ancestors tried to kill. They shot it and burned the mountain. So they would learn to not like you
Yeah, that's
very
true.
quickly.
Yeah.
That's over in the Springerville area. They had some run-ins with the Bigfoot, and they burned a particular mountain to try to get rid of them.
When was this?
That was back in the early 1900s.
Oh, gee.
And you know, if you want to do a little, I'm not going to tell you which mountain it is, but if you want to do a little bit of research, you can find out.
Wow, that's incredible. So if you had to guesstimate, or what is your take on what the Bigfoot population would be on the Mogollon on the top?
Well, there's probably a couple of clans in the White Mountains area, a couple of clans in the Greens Peak area. And there's quite a few on the central area around Heber, Forest Lakes, Chevelon, Woods Canyon. That's where Matt Moneymaker likes to go, is up there by Woods Canyon. Then there's a couple of clans over towards the Flagstaff area. Used to be Lake Mary, Munns Park, that type of area.
Mm-hmm.
He was supposed to be selling Mountain Graham down by Thatcher.
Yeah. Yeah, we've a smaller Bigfoot down in the Mount Graham area. The Indians and the local people refer to it as the schizamine.
Really?
Yeah.
You've investigated there?
I haven't been there yet, but I've had one friend that found a mountain lion skeleton in a tree. Yeah. And then I had another acquaintance that told me about the schizamine and what they're called in that local area.
Wow, I've never heard of that.
So,
And then there was somebody that called up and said that he used to go in as a kid when his dad would take him in there, and the dad would take in dog food to leave to this Bigfoot creature.
yeah.
Imagine dog food would be a treat. The soft dog food?
I don't know what kind of dog food it was.
Yeah.
He said I'd go there like once a week and leave food for this Bigfoot when I was
Wow.
a kid.
So Arizona's chock full of stories and chock full of reports and stuff, but you can't get to them through the normal reporting systems. They're not going to talk to the BFRO. They're not going to talk to outsiders. You know, most of the people up there are kind of close friends and relatives and stuff like that. So you really have to have an in to be able to get. So, yeah, you get a lot of sightings in the Northwest and stuff like that, but that's almost accepted now. When I first started saying there's Bigfoot in Arizona, you should have seen some of the comments I got from the people from the Northwest. You know, there can't be Bigfoot in Arizona. There's no way, you know. And they said, you can't prove Bigfoot exists in Arizona. Well, you can't prove that there's Bigfoot in the Northwest. I mean, so,
Yeah.
but I think we are very. I think our Bigfoots have been concentrated because in the Northwest they have vast territories. They can,
Oh, yeah.
you know, here,
Yeah, from Northern California to Washington, up to Alaska,
yeah,
entire area there.
and in here they're stuck.
Yeah.
They're landlocked, basically, you know. So,
True. Well, Mitch, is there anything you want to leave us with before we conclude the interview?
well, people can go to my website and see all kinds of photos and videos. What I have tried to do with my videos is document my efforts from basically the beginning all the way through. There's not going to be a Bigfoot in every video, and some of the videos are very boring. But I've tried to document what I've seen that works and what doesn't work. So yeah, a lot of people get frustrated, and it's not a website that's made for the people that have troubles paying attention for too long, you know. It's something you need to study, you know.
Yeah.
Asking me how I transitioned from the civilian life into being a Bigfoot hunter.
And we started with your book,
Yeah,
right?
right. Well, basically I had to have a job like most other people. You know, I had to work for a living, so I was a weekend warrior just like a lot of people are. And I remember telling a lot of my associate researchers, if there's any way that I can do this full time, I'll do it. I'll find a way. Well, the books, I produce books on it now. I do the videos on YouTube. I changed the videos on YouTube into actual DVDs and sell them through Amazon.com and so forth. And that's basically what buys me equipment and gas and stuff like that. I'm also a retired Air Force major, and I'm drawn Social Security, which both could go away if the government shuts down. You know?
Man, that's a whole nother
Anyway,
story.
he worked at NORAD just before he retired, so if you ever want to talk about aliens and UFOs, he's the guy to talk to,
Yeah.
but that's a subject for another day.
I was the space officer for NORAD U.S. Space Command.
Is that right?
Wow.
Nothing went into our atmosphere or came out of our atmosphere without me knowing about it. And I did that job for, what, 8 years?
I don't remember how long you were there. I know you were in space stuff for a long time. But
Yeah,
he saw some interesting space stuff even before he got to NORAD, but
yeah.
yeah, well, that's another subject for another day. So.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. Well, Mitch, I appreciate you having us in your home to conduct the interview.
Sure.
I think it's been really interesting. I think you've got a lot to offer the Bigfoot community. And I think it's probably just a matter of time before hopefully something here in Arizona breaks where it's, you know, common knowledge
Mhm.
that Bigfoot do exist in Arizona. And hope that you're at the forefront of that.
Well, I won't kill one. unless it's self-defense. But if I killed one in self-defense, I would definitely try to bring it out.
Sure.
If I ran upon a body, I'd try to bring it out. But, you know, will that happen? You know, who knows?
They most likely
Yeah.
bury their dead.
Yeah, we pretty much think they buried the dead.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think so as well. Well, Mitch, thank you very much. Appreciate you making the time to have us stop by and set up in your living room and kind of invade your space for a while.
Sure.
All right. Thanks again.
Okay.